Okay, today we're going to do ACB factoring, and ACB factoring comes from when we had the standard form of an equation. Remember when we had AX plus BY plus C or equals C? It's very similar to that. We have A, or in this case it'd be y squared, plus by plus c. And so this is where they get the ACB, okay? So that's where we used to get it from. This is where we now use it. Whenever possible, factor out the greatest common factor. Not always possible, but always try it first. You want to reduce the numbers you're working with. It's going to make it a lot easier. Make a chart for the ACB values. That's what they've done here. I do it a little differently, and I'll show you here in a little bit. You only want to use the values inside the parentheses. What we're looking here is when they divided everything by 2, because that's our greatest common factor, then we get 2 times 2y squared plus 13y plus 15. And so when I'm looking at the A, B, and C, then this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the A and the C, and this is going to be my B. Okay? So if I take 2 times 15, I get 30. And so that's my A times C. Okay? So that's A times C. That's 30. And then I think about all the factors that make 30. So I know I can do positive 1, positive 30. I could also use negative 1, negative 30, because that would give me a positive 30. And then 5 and 6, or negative 5 and negative 6. And then I can also use positive 3, positive 10, or I can use negative 3, negative 10. And then I want to add them together to equal B. So A plus C should equal what B is, and B up here is 13. So if I take 1 plus 30, I get 31. Negative 1 plus negative 30 is negative 31, and so forth. And even though they have this one highlighted, we're looking for a positive 13. So we actually want the positive 3 and the positive 10. So this is actually the one we're going to use. Okay? And what we do is this 13y now becomes, I can break it up, and I can make it 2y squared plus 3y plus 10y plus 15. Because if I take 3y plus 10y, I get 13y. All I did was make it a polynomial with 4 terms instead of the trinomial that we started with. And now I can take and break it up into 2 groups. And that's what they've done here, is they have this, and we're going to break them up into 2 groups. And you can use the box method if you like that way. If you don't like that way, you can do it like this. Well, you just break them up. So I have 2y squared and 3y. Well, they each have a y, so I'm going to bring out the y. And that gives me 2y plus 3. And then the 10 and the 15, I can take a positive 5 out. And so I get 2y plus 3. Now you see that these are the same. So there's one of my terms. So the 2y plus 3, and then the y plus 5 is my other term. And then don't forget, your greatest common factor does have to come. You can't just drop it off. It needs to come back. Okay? Let's do one to practice. So on number 1 in our practice, we have 6x squared minus 10x minus 4. And when I take a look at it, I'm looking for my greatest common factor. And when I look at these, I see that it's 2. If I don't break it down, then I've got larger numbers to work with, and it gets to be a little more tedious as the numbers get larger. So this now becomes 3x squared minus 5x minus 2, because my greatest common factor was 2. And we'll come back to that here in a few minutes. So I have a trinomial, and I need to find out what my AC is. So if I take 3 times negative 2, I'm going to get negative 6. And my B is negative 5. So now I have to think about all the factors of negative 6. And I can have a 1 times negative, I can have a 1 and a negative 6. I can have a negative 1 and a positive 6. I can have a negative 2 and a positive 3. Or I can have a 2 and a negative 3. And this would give me if I add them, I would get negative 1. Add that, I get 1. Add this, I get 5. And if I add this, I get negative 5. The one I'm looking for is negative 5, so these are the factors that I'm going to use in my equation. So I have 3x squared minus 5x minus 2, and I'm going to break this up using these two terms. So 3x squared plus 1x minus 6x minus 2. Now I can break these up into two groups. Looks like I could take x out of both of those, and that would be 3x plus 1. And I can take negative 2 out of that, and that would give me 3x plus 1. So my 3x plus 1 my x minus 2, and then I can't forget my greatest common factor. It was 2. I'm going to bring it down. So this is my final answer. I can do the same with this one. When I look at this, I see factor of, looks like 3 is going to be my largest common factor. So my GCF is 3. So then this becomes 3m squared minus 22m plus 7. And so I'm going to take my A times my C. So my AC is 21, sorry. Helps if I do it right. 3 times 7 is 21. And my B is negative 22. So now I need to think of all the factors of negative 21. So I can do, positive 21. So I can do a 1 and a 21, a negative 1 and a negative 21. I can do 3 and 7, and negative 3 and negative 7. Well, if I add these two, I get negative 10. I get 10, negative 22, positive 22. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a negative 22. So these are the factors I'm going to want. So I have my 3m squared minus 22m plus 7. And I'm going to split my negative 22m into a negative 1m and a negative 21m. So a negative 1m minus 21m plus 7. And then break that into two groups. I can take an m out of both. 3m minus 1. I can take a 7 out of both. Negative 3m plus 1. This isn't quite the match, but I noticed that if I take and divide it by negative 7, that will change these. So if I change it to negative 7, then I get negative 7 times positive 3 is negative 21. And negative 7 times negative 1 gives me a positive 7. So then I have my two that are the same. So I have my 3m minus 1 times m minus 7, and my greatest common factor was 3, so I need to bring that down. Sometimes you cannot get a greatest common factor off the bat, and that's what's showing here on number 3. I have a 2, a 23, and 11. I don't have a variable in each one, so this one does not have a greatest common factor. So we're just going to start with the AC, which is 2 times 11 is 22, and my B is negative 23. So I start looking at my factors. 22, it can be 1 and 22. It could be negative 1 and negative 22. It could be 2 and 11. And it could be negative 2 and negative 11. So if I add them, I get negative 13, positive 13, negative 23, and positive 23. We're looking for a negative 23, so these are the factors I'm going to use. So I'm going to have 2c squared minus 23c plus 11, and I'm going to split the negative 23c with negative 1 and negative 22. So I get 2c squared minus c, if you want to put a 1 in front of it you can, minus 22c plus 11. Split it. I can take a c out. 2c minus 1. And then, because this is starting with a negative, I'm going to take a negative 11 out. Negative 11 times positive 2 gives me 22, negative 22. And then a negative 11 times a negative 1 gives me a positive 11. So those two match, and I get 2c minus 1 times c minus 11. Because I did not have a greatest common factor to start with, this is my answer. If you have any questions, make sure you let me know. Also, remember, if you are ever concerned that you do not know if you got the right answer, just reverse the problem. Multiply it out using FOIL and see if you get the same answer that you started with. That's a great way to check your work. Thank you.